Okay. Hello, welcome to CalMatters and our latest edition of Getting Through the Coronavirus Explained. I'm Jackie Botts and I cover economic inequality in California. Right now, the coronavirus pandemic is putting more people on shaky financial ground than ever before, so we put together this series of live events in which CalMatters reporters like me talk with California policymakers and professionals who are tasked with getting us through this pandemic. Past topics we've covered include what senior citizens should do during the shutdown, what employees who've just been laid off or furloughed should do about filing for unemployment benefits, what the state is doing to help small businesses keep their doors open. All these Getting Through the Coronavirus explainers live here on CalMatters YouTube page and also on our podcast hub, soundcloud.com/CalMatters. You can keep track of these events and all our timely news and coverage of statewide issues in a few ways. Sign up to receive our daily e-newsletter, What Matters, which comes out every morning. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and our podcast hub at SoundCloud. And consider becoming a CalMatters member or donor to help us keep doing our nonprofit, nonpartisan journalism on the issues and legislation being shaped in California's capital that will affect you. All of that information needed to do that is on our website at calmatters.org. So let's get started with our Q&A today. Before the coronavirus pandemic, California was a place where millions of people struggled to make ever-rising rent each month. More than a third of the state lived in or just above poverty, and those were the stories that I was covering before all of this. But now, with California's stay-at-home orders to keep people safe, millions of California workers have lost their jobs. Many were already struggling and now don't know how they're going to feed their families or stay housed. Others are finding they need to apply for safety net benefits that they haven't applied for before. Luckily, California is a state with a big safety net, and it has gotten bigger during the pandemic. There are a lot of ways to get help, but it is not always easy or straightforward. So luckily today we have three experts who understand the ins and outs of the financial help that's available at the local level, at the state level, and in some cases at the federal level. And the point of this conversation today is to be really practical. So for those who have lost income during the pandemic, how can you get help getting food, paying rent, and covering bills? We also have heard from readers who are fortunate enough to still have a job who want to help out, and we'll address that as well. And we want you to be a part of the conversation along with us. So please submit your questions by typing them into the chat box on the right-hand side of the YouTube screen. I'll add yours to my list of questions to ask our panelists. And one more quick note before we get started. We know that around 2.5 million people at least have applied for unemployment insurance, and many of you may have questions about unemployment-related benefits. A few weeks ago, CalMatters led a great Q&A on that very topic, so we won't be focusing too much on those issues today, but I encourage you to check out that conversation on our YouTube channel. And I'd like to introduce our panelists. So joining me today, we have Cathy Senderling-McDonald, Deputy Executive Director for County Welfare Directors Association, an organization that represents directors of social services departments in all 58 counties. We have Armando Hernandez, Director of Community Programs at the Unity Council in Oakland, a nonprofit that is deeply entrenched in the Fruitvale District community there, which, as I can surmise, does about 1,002 things in 5 languages, from early education programs to employment training to helping people find affordable housing. And we have Jessica Bartholow, a policy advocate at the Western Center on Law and Poverty, an organization that advocates for a strong safety net in California, in the courts, in California's capital, and in DC. So to kick it off, I'd like to ask each of you to give us a sense of what the most urgent needs that you're hearing about right now are on the ground at your various organizations. And let's start with Armando.
I forgot I was on mute. So I want to highlight, first of all, the needs for workers that we are hearing. So there's definitely so many people concerned with not being able to pay rent for April and May. So I think that's going to be one of the most immediate needs that we need to really plan for, because even though there is an eviction moratorium, people are still carrying debt, and so that's going to really impact families and individuals who, specifically those who won't qualify for unemployment or other sources of relief. So that's one. And then the second one that I want to highlight is small businesses. We know there's huge challenges, particularly for businesses who are closed. So I think that's going to be the other thing we need to look at. We're getting tons of calls, our organization and other partner organizations with needs from small businesses. So those are the two things that I want to address at some point in today's call.
Thank you. Jess, do you want to go ahead?
Sure. So Western Center on Law and Poverty serves as a support center for legal services throughout the state of California. Our legal services providers provide free legal assistance and safety net support for millions of Californians who are low income. Through that network of legal services providers and other kind of community-based organizations that we work with in the anti-hunger community, a couple of things that we've been hearing the most about is people's lack of access to food. Even if in some cases, the food has run out, they might have a hard time getting to the grab-and-go programs that the school districts are setting up. In other cases, they're newly poor and trying to figure out how to apply for benefits. Both, the unemployment benefits or SNAP benefits. And there is extra help coming, and some has already arrived in those households, but trying to figure out, even if they do have the extra help, how to access it. They may not be able to get to the grocery store. It might be far away. The public transit has slowed down or stopped. They might not be able to leave the house if they are sick or feeling ill and they're supposed to be self-quarantining. Some people are also having a hard time preparing food. And so they're sick and they're trying not to have to prepare food for their child who hasn't been tested with the virus yet. So there's a lot of concern about food. Also rent, we have a robust housing team effort to try to respond to people who are unable to pay their rent this month and possibly in future months. And then I would also say just, basic concern about job and children not being able to be in school and the health of children. I have a friend. I'm sorry. My dog came into the picture.
Great. We welcome more experts. And Cathy, thank you for highlighting all of those issues around hunger. That'll be the first thing that we touch on in the resources that are available once we get started talking about resources. And Cathy, what are you hearing from the directors of welfare organizations?
Sure, absolutely. So the 58 county human services agencies are working, and we'll talk about some of the ways that they've been shifting their work more toward online and by phone rather than the in-person offerings that we've always provided. What we're hearing the most from them about things that they'd like help with, either from the state or federal government, is figuring out how to be able to focus most of their resources toward the front end, processing the new applications that they're receiving, especially in the CalFresh or SNAP program and the other programs that I'll talk about in a bit, increasing as well, but not as rapidly as that food and nutrition benefit that people seek. In some cases, we are going to need some help from the federal government to do that, and we may be more or less successful, and we can talk about some of the details on that. The other area that we're really hoping to get some relief is to be able to see our benefits, both the nutrition benefits as well as cash assistance that we provide through our CalWorks Welfare to Work program increase, either with one-time supplements, with temporary increases to the monthly payments that are made, but figuring out how to advocate for those to increase. And then also thinking about how to make sure that our undocumented populations who might not otherwise benefit from those changes actually are able to receive some kind of an increase to help them, even though they may not be involved in those programs due to eligibility issues. So those are kind of the three things we've, at a broad level, been focusing the most on.
Okay, great. And Jess, can you just sort of walk us through the resources available for Californians who need help getting food right now?
Sure. So there are a couple of main safety net programs that have already been available and are changing how they do distribution or are ramping up in some areas and providing different resources in others. So those are, first and foremost, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. This is called SNAP at the federal level, and in California is referred to as CalFresh. CalFresh is a way for people to get a food benefit on a monthly basis put onto an electronic payment card referred to as EBT. And these benefits can only be used for food. They can be used in most grocery stores, corner stores across the country, also in some college campus cafeterias, and in some restaurants. That program, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, it really is the country's most important response to hunger in pre-COVID and certainly post-COVID. And so we'll talk a little bit more about what's happening there, but a big shout out to Congress that was able to pass increases in benefits through the Families First Act, and that has allowed us to expand the resources available in that program. Another program that's available to families with children is a school meal and summer lunch and child and adult care food program. These programs together combined create a kind of prepared meal safety net for families with children, for children specifically. During the school year, the kids get access to this food in the school day through breakfast, through lunch, after school programs. In the summer, they can receive aid through the summer lunch program. But with school being closed, everything changes with regards to the distribution of those meals. Many school districts across the state have erected grab and go programs, and those grab and go programs are available to any child in the district or younger siblings as well. Some school districts, really great congratulations to those school districts that are able to do this. Los Angeles Unified School District confirmed that they are. Some of these school districts providing an additional meal to the parents or guardians in the home, the adults in the home. Of course, the reason for that is because if the child is in the home where adults in the home are experiencing hunger, that's not good for the child either. And these adults are being asked to lead in the educational efforts for their children who are now doing homeschooling and working with their teachers online, etc. So it's really important we don't let the parents or grandparents or older siblings over 18 who are in the home with school-age children, we don't let them go hungry if they're coming to get a grab-and-go meal. We love that some school districts are able to provide this. This is not a reimbursable meal, and so we are looking to expand that. Another place where a really important place where people are getting food right now, I think everybody's seen in the news coverage on the issue, is our food banks. And they have an amazing team of people working at the California Association of Food Banks, and I'll provide in the chat section, they have a COVID relief page where people can go and find out what's going on in their community for food banks and food pantries that are serving larger groups of people and with fewer volunteers. And that's because the food bank community is really staffed by so many volunteers who are older or may have a pre-existing condition and are staying home. So if you're looking for a way to volunteer, that might be someplace to go. They really need help. Other programs that are out there and serving the Meals on Wheels and Senior Congregate Meals programs are working with the Department of Aging to try to figure out plans to get home delivered meals to seniors as they're not able to go out. And those would be the main places where people should look for food and food assistance. And finally, the Women, Infant, and Children program. You might have seen in the news people asking their neighbors to not purchase the WIC eligible food off of the shelf. This Women, Infant, and Children program is a nutrition program supplemental specifically for pregnant women and families with children under five and under. These are supplemental nutrition commodity purchases that are specific for that age children and also for pregnant women. There's only usually certain types of and certain products that can be purchased. And so that's why you are seeing social media ask for you to limit your purchases to ones that weren't WIC eligible. Thankfully, with our leadership in our from the governor and our public health department and the WIC advocates, we were able to get relief of that. And so now substitutions can be allowed for those purchases. So those are the main areas where people can seek help in securing nutrition, preventing hunger during COVID and after COVID.
Okay, great. And we have posted a document with lots of links to resources, which includes information about where school meals are being provided, how you can apply for CalFresh. So please look in I think it's in our chat, for that document. I already see a number of people that are on it and looking at it. And quick follow-up, Jess, can people who get CalFresh use that to buy food online?
Hi, sorry, I was on mute. Can people on CalFresh use their CalFresh benefits to purchase food online? So up until this past year, that hadn't been done before. In 2019, however, there were nationwide pilots in 6 places that tested the ability to use an EBT PIN code system for purchase online. And California, as well as Arizona and Florida, were approved to extend that pilot into our state. Unfortunately, the current pilot participants are the only ones certified by the USDA to extend into the other states. And currently, for California, will roll out approximately at the very end of April, with 2 large retailers, Amazon and Walmart. The good news is that these retailers serve a lot of people, and that many low-income EBT consumers are already shopping at Walmart because they're in many communities and have low prices. But it is a limited group of retailers, and so we've heard a lot about other retailers trying to make sure that they can offer this to their customers, not only so that they can have choices, but also so that people can continue shopping at the retailers they're used to shopping at, and can maintain their distance from others in doing so. There's another option that the Food Marketing Institute has been documenting, and we're encouraging grocers to look at this as well, or for SNAP recipients to talk to their grocers to see if they could do this. And this is online ordering, where somebody could go to a website and order the food, but purchase it in the store, or perhaps by delivery with a portable point-of-sale machine or device. These are alternatives to online purchasing, which would be allowed without an extension of the purchase pilot project for online. So everybody's really working hard to figure out what are ways that people can purchase food, have it delivered, have it curbside pickup, within the context of the online purchase pilot, but also outside of it.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And Cathy, can you tell us about the other resources Californians can access right now at their county human services department?
Sure, Jackie, I'd be happy to. So you've heard a lot about CalFresh. Some of the other programs that counties run that are really relevant, I think, to people who are losing income, having more people join their households as they shelter in place, include the CalWorks program. I mentioned that earlier. That is our cash assistance and welfare to work program. And so it's for families with children. You can apply for that online, by phone, or you could drop off an application to many county offices, though most offices are closed or consolidated in some way in the counties due to the need to, not only shelter in place, but also be able to socially distance. You may want to call your county if you're not sure exactly where to go. If you do want to try to do something in person, you can always start on the phone or online and then talk to a person later on if you get stuck. So those are some good options. So this offers both cash assistance and then assistance in finding employment or training programs. Right now, we're focusing a lot more, as you might imagine, on the cash assistance. We are seeing pretty sharp, for CalWorks, where we would maybe get 8 to 10,000 applications in the program a month. We're now seeing that go higher just in the last couple of weeks. These are small numbers. There's not as many people on that program as receive CalFresh benefits or Medi-Cal health benefits, but we expect it to continue to increase. The other major program that the counties administer is Medi-Cal, the health coverage program that's available cost-free or with a share of cost depending on someone's income. And so we have not yet seen a really large increase in the applications in that program. We do already have more than 13 million people on the program. Health coverage is something that people have tended to get and retain just because of the need to do so for income tax purposes now in the state, as well as wanting to have that, safety net in case you do get ill for you or your families. So I don't know how rapidly we'll see that increase, but that is available for people. We can also help connect them to Cover California for coverage under their system as well. And what we're expecting, I think, to see is two things. People who may be losing their job-based coverage but have a little cushion through April or May, as often the job coverage lasts, throughout the month when you lose your job, may then want to come in, apply online through Cover California or apply online through county sites, and we can provide the link for that for people in the chat panel. We also anticipate that Cover California, which is for employed persons or people with somewhat higher incomes than Medi-Cal, they will end up hearing from people who are losing their income and thus end up being eligible for Medi-Cal rather than the Cover California program. So we expect to see sort of a couple places where people may end up with our services through Medi-Cal who may either have job-based or have historically been served through Cover California. Those are the two main things. I'll mention just one more thing, which is for individuals or couples who do not have children, counties also operate general assistance or general relief programs. We usually sort of lump those and say GAGR. That may be something that you could be eligible for, some cash assistance and possibly some job services as well when things start to get back on their feet, training and employment assistance, that even if you don't qualify for the CalWorks program. So just if you're listening or watching this and say, well, I don't have any kids, so I don't think I could get that cash assistance, you may be eligible under the GAGR program. So it would be a good idea to check that as well if you need the assistance.
Okay, and I'm going to actually jump in here with a quick question from a listener who asked about county welfare departments that are closed to the public right now and don't have limited in-person hours. They asked, for someone who has limited phone or online access, how can they get help?
That is an excellent question, and I think it's one that each individual county is working through now, so I don't have a great answer on a 58-county basis. We're actually in the process of learning more through a survey that we're doing with the California Department of Healthcare Services, which we run Medi-Cal on behalf of, as well as the Department of Social Services, which oversees CalWorks and CalFresh, to figure out what exactly is available in each county, which is something that has not really been answerable at this point. And we needed to let things settle a little bit. People shifting their folks to the phone lines, for example, and out of the in-person. What I would suggest is, since I'm not going to be able to answer for each individual county, if you're able to at least get on the phone enough to check in with the county to find out, or ask a friend if they could do the phone call, or to look that up for you if they've got access to the internet, you will likely be able to find something on the website for the County Human Services Agency about how to access them right now. What are the best numbers to call? Which offices may be open on that limited basis to be able to take information, take applications, and things like that. We're also trying to work with some advocates, I'll just say, Jackie, to also try to put some best practices into place, thinking through with counties how might they be able to have a monitored, but not necessarily fully staffed kind of area where somebody could grab an application or a commonly used form or brochure, that sort of thing. Some counties we think are offering that now, to sort of think, how can we make that be more widespread? So if somebody does need to come and get that paper, they've got a place to go during, some set hours during the day, and we can direct them in the county to that.
Okay, great. Armando, your organization serves many who are undocumented, and I'm wondering what help are you seeing become available in your community for people who, due to their immigration status, don't qualify for other benefits?
Sure. So I want to just address, so some of the resources I'll mention are both for undocumented immigrants as well as many thousands of immigrants who do have a status, but their status is temporary. So these are folks like youth who have a DACA status or PTS or temporary residency, asylum status. All of these folks have permission to work in the US and they contribute into some of these programs. But if they were to access some of these programs that have been mentioned, they could be deemed a public charge under the new rules. And so it's really, we're talking about a huge portion of the state, not just undocumented immigrants. But so the main resource that I would suggest is checking with local organizations, because we know that many of these folks, even though they are workers, and as I mentioned, they may be eligible for some of these programs, they won't, because of fear for putting their status in jeopardy, they won't access these resources. So there are multiple organizations. For example, I'll just mention at the local level, in San Francisco, the Mission Asset Fund is putting out grants for local residents to help with rental payments and other essential needs. This should be up on their website fairly soon. Also in Oakland, there is Centro Legal de la Raza, and they are going to be helping people also with rental assistance as well as any eviction prevention. Again, we know that there's a moratorium on evictions, but we also know that many landlords may be issuing letters or warnings to their tenants if they're not able to pay. And so we urge residents who may be immigrants to begin reaching out to organizations before they have the pressure of having to deal with an eviction. At the Unity Council, we also just created our own fund to help with rental assistance, but that's for registered clients at this point, unless we get additional funds coming up. So that's going to be, I think, the most immediate source of help that we've identified. In terms of small businesses and low-income business owners, which are sometimes owned by immigrants as well, we urge them to reach out to their business improvement districts. We know in Alameda County, there are a number of business improvement districts, BIDs. And so each one of them might have different resources for the members within that district. We're also chambers of commerce. We know the Metropolitan Chamber of Commerce in Oakland has been really active in planning with local businesses. In Oakland, for example, organizations such as the Unity Council and others are providing free technical assistance to help local businesses to apply for grants that are more complicated, such as at the federal and state level, and loans, of course. So those would be the two more immediate things that I can suggest for folks for whom immigration may be an issue.
Okay, great, thank you. And a lot of readers did write in and ask about that. They asked, how can I access benefits if I am undocumented or have another legal status? Makes it difficult to qualify. They've also asked, how can we help out? One reader asked about specifically helping farm workers in California, and I reached out to reporter Kate Samini, a reporter at the Californian, who has been doing a lot of work, writing a lot of articles about farm workers during coronavirus, and she suggested reaching out to the United Farm Workers branch or Teamsters in your area, or the Community Rural Legal Assistance Office in your area, to find out what local funds have been put together. Right now, we're seeing a sort of patchwork of funds around communities in California. At this point, there is no state relief fund for immigrant communities that don't qualify for other benefits. But so do the research in your community if you're hoping to help.
And if I can point out, philanthropy has really stepped in, at least locally in the Bay Area, and I would imagine that it might be similar in other parts of the state. So I would encourage folks who have a chance to help other communities. If you can reach out to local foundations or local organizations that might be activating some of these funds, I think that might be the best way to get your funds directly into the hands of people. And I'll just give a shout out. For example, the Stupsky Foundation has been giving out grants for food security in the Bay Area. And these funds are intended to reach folks who are not going to qualify for unemployment or for some of the federal relief or other programs. So I think it's really important to check at the local level, because that might be the easiest way or the fastest way to get funds deployed and for them to reach individuals who need it or families who need it.
Thank you so much. Yes, we've been hearing a lot about the federal stimulus checks, and I'm wondering what advice you have for people to make sure that they get their federal stimulus check, particularly people who don't generally file taxes, who perhaps don't have a direct deposit registered with the IRS, or perhaps don't have a stable mailing address.
Would you like me to respond to that? This is Jess.
Yes, please.
Okay. All right. So first, before I answer that question, one thing I do want to say is it is tremendous to be watching the California communities respond to our neighbors who don't have citizenship or documentation that allows them to access some of these benefits or are afraid to access some of these benefits. It's been beautiful, really, and it makes me really proud of who we are as a state. And it would make me a lot prouder of who we are as a state if the state of California could step up and find out resources so that people who are out of work, who pay taxes every day, who can't file for the tax relief, who can't apply for benefits, that we don't leave them behind in this recession. We did in the last, and the impacts of that were really long. So currently, the current status is that many of these programs might not be available. There might not be unemployment or tax relief for some of these populations, but we are really hopeful. We know that there's deliberation in the state capitol, and we are hopeful that that will change. So just a little plug there for who we are as Californians, that we don't believe that people should go without food or healthcare or basic needs, especially during this time, but usually all the time, just simply because of their immigration status. So there's that. Let me pivot to talk about the tax relief. So through the CARES Act, the federal CARES Act, it authorized a certain amount of money to come to people in something that's called a tax relief or tax stimulus check. For a big bulk of people, they will not have to apply for this. If you have submitted your taxes, if you filed your taxes in 2018 or 2019, you're done. You should get your tax relief. It'll be $1,200 for an individual adult, an additional $500 for eligible children in the household, and it's only eligible for people up to a certain income. So you do have to make sure that you're below that income to receive it. A lot of people have already received these dollars. I got a call from one of our CalWorks clients the other just 2 days ago. She had just moved out of a shelter. She had been there for 4.5 months with her daughter, and they just moved out of the shelter. They had they didn't have food, and they didn't have kind of the basics. And she had called me. She was so excited that she was going to get a microwave and some food at the grocery store when she got her money. So we know that tens of millions of Americans have already gotten these checks. Check in your bank account; it might be there. For people who there are going to be some groups of people for whom it's not going to be that easy. So for example, I told you about people filing their 2018 and 2019 taxes. They'll get their checks automatically. People who get Social Security retirement benefits or railroad benefits, Social Security disability benefits, any of those people will automatically get a check. They won't have to do anything. There was some confusion at the federal level, apparently, about whether or not SSI recipients, supplemental security income recipients, who are usually in the most dire straits, and also veterans, could get their benefits automatically, get their tax stimulus automatically. And it looks like just today, minutes before joining the call, there was some clarification from the federal government that they are going to try to do that. However, it will take longer for somebody who is an SSI recipient and has children in their home to receive the extra stimulus for the child. So if you are on SSI or you get veterans assistance benefits, you may consider applying or filing. There's a specific document that the IRS has prepared that's specifically for people called non-filers. And if you are a non-tax filer because you don't have earned income, you can go to that site and file. It doesn't hurt to do that. It's not necessary if you've already filed your taxes in 2018 and 2019, and also if you have Social Security, retirement, railroad benefits, Social Security, disability. But it may be necessary for all the people in your home to receive their tax stimulus if you're in the other two categories. Some people may say, well, I'm not on any of those benefits and I've never, I haven't filed this year. I wasn't employed. Can I still file? Can I still get my tax stimulus? Yes, you can. You go to the IRS non-filers page and you file. This money is not just for you, it's for your community. It's for all of us to help spend in our local government, in our local economy, to help make sure that that there is economic activity. And the most conservative economists will say the best way to get the economy going is to get people out there spending money in the economy. So that's why they're sending the stimulus dollars to people, and but also to cover your basic needs. One concern we do have about that, and we will have a fact sheet, it's not posted yet, but we are publishing a fact sheet with all of these questions and answers for you with the Neighborhood Legal Services of Los Angeles. Western Center will publish a Q&A document later today. We'll share that on our website. But one question you might have is, if you owe debt, what happens to your stimulus payment? I always say having done it myself, it's impossible to escape poverty without debt. It's just part and parcel of being poor and struggling with poverty. So many of the people we serve have debt. And the answer to that question is, if you have debt, except for child support debt, it shouldn't be intercepted at the federal level or at the state level. Controller Betty Yee took swift action to make sure that these checks and other tax stimulus wouldn't be intercepted at the state level. And in the federal law, it actually says that they can't be taken to pay off debt. Which is great news if you owe, student loan debt, or you owe a parking ticket. They're not going to take that money and divert it to those purposes at this point. However, if you owe consumer debt, we have heard some really disturbing news lately that over the last 24 hours, that as people are getting their stimulus checks in their bank account, some debt collectors are out there grabbing it. And some banks are taking fees. So we encourage anybody that does owe consumer debt, past consumer debt, as soon as that money hits your bank account, please take it out. Your last question was, how do people get this if they don't have a bank account? If they don't have a bank account, when they file on the non-filer page, they can request that it be mailed someplace. They do have to have a trusted place to mail it, though. And even for some Californians, that's a struggle right now, especially if they're moving because of not being able to pay rent or economic instability. So we recognize that this solution is not the best solution. We had advocated for a different solution and for the benefits to come through other channels, but this is what Congress decided. So we're going to make sure as many low-income Californians that could benefit from this will receive this stimulus payment. So look for that fact sheet and ask for help in filing. It's $1,200 for each individual adult, $500 for each eligible child. This is unfortunately a benefit that is not going to be available for a person without documentation or without an I-10 number. So workers, another place where immigrant workers who pay taxes, who pay into the system, will not be able to benefit from the same relief in the COVID law that their neighbors will. So again, trying to find ways for California to remedy that.
Okay, great, thank you. And now this is a question for whoever has an answer, and I am also going to ask us to keep the answers short and sweet right now so we can get through a few of the questions that our listeners have sent to us. But this question is, what are the best ways for people with the means, whether it be time or money, to help others in their community right now? We've discussed some of these, but if there are any other methods or funds that you all recommend donating to, pipe up. Thank you.
If I can mention, one of the things I forgot to mention earlier that we have been hearing about at the local level is because schools are not going back for the rest of the school year, or at least that's supposed to be the case in most of the state, many students are struggling with distance learning. And not just because they weren't trained, or most of us are having to learn how to work from home, but also because they don't have the technology. So many of the students are doing their homework on their phone, and they may not have an internet account. So I think if people are able to donate, I would encourage them to contact either local schools or, again, local organizations that might be able to activate funds really quickly. Because one of the things that we're doing in Oakland is working with the Oakland Unified School District to try to get both laptops as well as internet access to as many students as possible, so that particularly kids and youth who may have been struggling before this crisis don't fall further behind. And so one of the things that is really time sensitive is to be able to get technology into the hands of youth so that they can complete the year as best they can. So that would be one of the resources that or one of the suggestions I would make to people who are able to donate. Thanks.
I think I've already mentioned the time. If you have time and are in a family where everybody's healthy, you may consider volunteering with your local food bank, food pantry, or Meals on Wheels programs. They're in desperate need for volunteers right now. Also, one of my favorite worker funds out there is the Garment Center workers. The Garment Center workers are in Los Angeles, and they're being asked to sew masks, but in conditions that are really subpar and where they're putting their own health at risk. They mostly don't have access to unemployment and some of these other benefits because they are largely a population of workers who don't have a documentation status that allows them to have it. So that is one of my favorite funds. They're also just a really great group of people and organizers. I'm proud to know them and call them friends. The other thing I wanted to point out, I really loved Armando's point about access to technology. We can't forget that, all of this is all of us being distant and staying away from each other. It really hinges on our ability to have access to technology. So I'll double down on what Armando's recommendation was and also say that the state of California should be able to make sure that the Lifeline, which is a free phone program available to low-income people, and it includes data and it includes phone and an actual phone. And we are working with TrueConnect to make sure that when people get mailed their phones, it includes the list of resources that you're providing the watchers today, that when a low-income person receives this phone in the mail, they get information about where to apply for benefits. We want to make sure that the state of California and the PUC, Public Utilities Council, has enough money budgeted to expand that program as necessary to keep people connected.
Okay, great. So here is a question from Paula in Santa Cruz. Paula owns a duplex and is retired, close to 70. And she's worried that if her renter cannot make the rent, she'll be in big trouble because her Social Security is not very much. She says because of underlying health issues and age, going back to work is not a possibility. So what options are available?
Well, I can say that she should, if she receives Social Security retirement, she should have received, or any day should receive her $1,200 stimulus. If she doesn't get Social Security retirement, instead she gets SSI. She probably hasn't gotten that check yet, and if she doesn't get the check, she should call legal services. She can connect to her local legal services through 211. Anybody in the state of California can dial 211. United Ways of California and the other 211 providers are there to help provide resources for anybody who dials those numbers. And so we would encourage her to do that, so she at least gets her $1,200. We recognize in California that's not a lot of money, and it doesn't necessarily pay for the rent for 1 month. The great news is that the courts have provided a true moratorium on evictions, and we're so grateful for the Chief Justice and the courts for making that decision just last week. We do have some resources about eviction, and maybe that is something that CalMatters can provide on a future phone call. But know that during the COVID emergency, you cannot be evicted. So please reach out to legal services if that's happening. And then finally, I know that our legislators, I had a call from a Assembly member Ting, the chairman of the Assembly Budgets Office, just before his district director, just before I got on the call, asking what else can they do. And so I know they're deliberating about situations like this to make sure that people after the end of this crisis aren't just jumped onto the street because they can't pay their back rent. So my colleagues this morning on our team call also said it's something that they're working on. So hang in there, and just know that everybody's working really hard to make sure that you don't end up without a home at the end of this.
This is Cathy, if I could jump in a little bit as well. I know that there are resources for renters and also sort of apartment owners. In this case, since you have just the one duplex with the other side being rented, I'm not sure if you've taken advantage of it, but the California Apartment Association has a website, and they have a lot of information right now about the eviction prevention measures that the governor has put in place. And to the extent that you may have a mortgage payment, many banks now are forgiving or delaying mortgage payments. So speaking with your bank would also be a very important thing to do, I'd guess sooner rather than later, if you think that you may have difficulty making a payment of that nature. I know also that the utility companies are not doing continuances during this time. So that may be something that could push a little, again, in conversation with them. And I think finally the like a neighborhood legal resources often helps renters, but in your situation could also be employed, like Jess said, to help you as well. Good luck.
Okay, great. Thank you. And another question here from a reader. So this is from Monique Guerrero in San Diego. She says that she's a single mother and she has 3 kids, 12, 7, and 1 years old. How are parents like me supposed to work right now? Are there any resources to help us deal with proper childcare, perhaps through the summer? And will there be more remote jobs available? So that's a lot of questions wrapped into one.
Well, I could start on that one, and maybe Jessica could jump in. I immediately started thinking about the CalWorks program, number one, which does, like I said, provide cash assistance and employment benefits to families with children. A single mom with 3 kids would definitely be included in that definition. And one of the employment-related services that is provided to individuals is childcare. And so definitely I'd encourage her to take a look to try to consider applying for that, as well as for the nutrition assistance through CalFresh, because with a family of 4, as you're describing it in her case, the income limits are, more generous than if it was just her by herself or her with 1 child. So she may think that she makes too much, or if her hours are being cut, if it's an hourly job, she may fall right within the income guidelines. And it's obviously a situation where needing childcare, that would be an area. She also could potentially call, if she'd like to try to continue working but needs the help with childcare, her local resource and referral network. they help people find subsidized childcare, and she may be eligible for subsidized care as well. So those are a couple of places for her to start for looking for that.
And I would just add that many of the CalWorks programs have a subsidized job program, and the CalWorks programs that they have, once they return post stay-at-home order, they have job training and certificate, even community college and college programs. So if you're in a profession that maybe isn't going to come back, the CalWorks program can be a place where you can either get a subsidized employment or seek to be retrained. A lot of people during the last recession were retrained. What kind of jobs, though? I think it's really going to depend on the market, like what's available. And I do think that there may be whole new areas of employment that it would be great to get families like yours, workers like you, to be involved in. And so I think it'll take all of us together. You speaking up today about what things look like for you is part of that.
Can I just add one more thing, which is, I have to be honest, I'm not exactly sure where to go for more information on this, but I do know that the federal act that has been enacted, it's the Families First Act, which was the second package, did modify the provisions of family and medical leave. And so if you work for either a public employer or someone who employs less than 500 people, you've worked there for at least 30 days, you could be eligible for up to 12 weeks of paid leave if you need to take that leave in order to care for children who would otherwise be in school or in a summer camp that may now, because of this, not be available. So I just wanted to mention that as well. It may be something to at least start Googling, kind of look into, see maybe your legal aid, local legal aid. And in San Diego, there's probably a number of providers in that, kind of space that you could talk to. Armando, I know you unmuted, so I'll shut up and let you jump in.
Thank you. For workers in situations such as this who are looking for maybe training or going back into a different field, or also just needing support to go back to work, one resource that many folks don't know about is the WIOAI programs. So that's WIOAI. And these WIOAI programs are managed by local workforce development boards in each city and each county. And they are implemented also by local organizations. So I can't speak for the San Diego area, but I know that in the Bay Area, we are actually using supportive services funds within these WIOAI programs to support enrolled workers with $500 grants that can go towards rental assistance, towards childcare, if you have kids that are supposed to be in school, but they can't be in school because schools are closed. And even for jobs like if you need to work from home and you're not set up with technology, some of those funds can be used for that as well. So I would really encourage callers or anybody watching who is in this situation to check locally, just do a quick research for who implements the WIOAI programs in your area, and then contact them. If you haven't been enrolled, you might still be able to be enrolled for the remainder of this fiscal year. But once you are, there are actually so many resources available within this program, such as training funds. I know in Oakland, we can give up to $5,000 or even $7,000 in grants if somebody's looking for training in a new career or to advance their career, particularly if they're not working or if their income meets the criteria. So it's a limited resource for people who are not working full time, but it sounds perfect for someone like this person who sent a question.
And I would just add that CalMatters did a previous session on unemployment. And so maybe that's another place where your family could go, or the families like you. There were additional benefits for people who are unemployed, people who are self-employed, people who did gig work, as well as an increase in benefit for people who are eligible for regular unemployment. And the EDD, Employment Department in California, is overseeing those programs, and that's a significant amount of resources available to you if you're eligible as well.
Okay, great. So we're coming up on the hour and we're going to wrap up now. I want to remind everyone that we have a document posted on YouTube that lists a lot of the resources that we've discussed today, and we're going to update it after this conversation, post it on calmatters.org, so you can refer back to that. Other organizations, including the Western Center, where Jessica works, have a lot of tip sheets for workers. They're in multiple languages, and a lot of other, I know that the Unity Council also has a number of links to great resources. So take a look at those websites as well if you're looking for resources or looking for what to Google in your community, because a lot of these are local funds and programs. So thank you so much to all three of you for joining us today and for the work that you're all doing to make sure Californians are getting the help they need right now. To those of you who tuned in, thanks so much for your great questions and your participation. If you missed any of the discussion, you can watch it again later or listen to it. The video will be available at calmatters.org and also here on our YouTube page. We're creating an audio podcast of this conversation as well, which will be available for download at calmatters.org and also on our podcast hub at soundcloud.com/calmatters. For all of our coverage about the coronavirus outbreak in California, subscribe to our newsletters at calmatters.org/subscribe. And also visit calmatters.org/coronavirus. And again, if you are able to support our journalism at this time, make a donation via our homepage at calmatters.org. Those URLs that I've listed are also where you can stay tuned for our upcoming Getting Through the Coronavirus Explained events. And in the meantime, please stay strong, stay healthy, and stay safe. And thanks again for joining us. We'll see you here next time.